I learned to make films when I was in college after my freshman year at the University of California at Santa Cruz, where I was a theater arts major, and I was doing all kinds of things relating to the arts, such as playwriting, screenwriting, acting for film, acting for theater, directing for both. When I was home from college and staying with my family in Newton, Massachusetts, where I grew up, I decided to make my first film. I bought a Super 8 movie camera, a Super 8 projector with external sound, and also a sort of mini flatbed where I could edit onto. And this was, of course, in the late 80s, pre-digital age, when everything was analog. I became really inspired by the filmmaker Maya Deren, who I had studied my freshman year of college. And she was an experimental filmmaker who used movement and dance, as she was a choreographer, to tell stories about the complexities of human identity and of human personality. So I wanted to make an homage to her. So I made the film with my friends, and it was about 8 minutes long, and we played it at parties, and it was very popular amongst our sort of social group. And then I got accepted into Columbia University's graduate film program after I got my Bachelor of Arts, moved to New York City, and started learning about video and video art, and how to make and edit films on, using video systems, which then, of course, is very primitive, pre-digital, pre-Mac, pre-iPhone. And although I moved more into the screenwriting department, which is what I ended up emphasizing, over the last few years, I went back to it because during COVID, I started doing videos at home on my iPhone and virtually using actors from all over the world, and realized the beauty of doing that. And it led to different kinds of films and projects that were more primitive, more like the early days of television. But I found them to be really fun because it was going back to the basics of just focusing on the acting and directing, as opposed to the complex technologies that had been used up until that point. The Boy came about through a personal relationship that I had in the mid-90s with my now late partner, who had contracted AIDS, and he just missed the protease inhibitor treatment which came out around 95, that would have saved his life had he hung in there for another few months. And I was haunted by that relationship and wanted to write about it. So what happened was I ended up writing a series of short plays that were about LGBTQ youth coming of age, looking at the complexities of modern life, of adulthood, what it means to be an adult, how one becomes an adult, what are the circumstances in which that happens. And so The Boy was a part of that group of plays. I then decided to make a film about it, which is what we're seeing in this festival. My favorite filmmakers mainly came from the French New Wave in the 50s and 60s, directors such as Agnes Varda, Francois Truffaut, Claude Chabrol, Jacques Rivette. I was impressed by them because they learned how to tell stories in a new way by using different kinds of editing processes and different kinds of writing styles, and came up with sort of a new way to tell stories that I found really inspiring and really moving. I also love Ingmar Bergman, who I think is the greatest film artist I can think of. And then my favorite American director is Robert Altman, because he was the master at creating his own universes, using large scale productions, large casts, in which everyone is kind of on board with his vision to create his own world, which is unique to him and his style. If I was given a good budget, I think I would like to make a film about my grandparents who were from the Ukraine, then called Russia, who emigrated to Philadelphia in the 1920s and who met on the boat going over to the US and stayed married for 50 years until their death. My grandmother was a union organizer in Philadelphia for the Milliners Workers Union. And I don't think she had the opportunity to really tell her story the way that she would have wanted to because of her life circumstances. So I would like to be the one to do that. The steps that I would ensure that production is on schedule is to work with a dedicated group of artists and friends who perhaps I've worked with before, who are solely on board with my vision. And I'm very into guerrilla style filmmaking, where you just sort of go into the streets and do it. and you use all of your resources that you can and that you can beg, borrow, and steal to get done, and that you give your friends full credit and cost sharing and profit sharing so that everyone benefits from it. And therefore, you can make the kind of film that you want to make with the right group of people. I think the hardest thing about making The Boy for me was that one of the actors wasn't alive during the AIDS crisis. He was either too young or not born yet. And so it was to sort of teach him about what that period of time was like and find a way for him to personalize it so that he could play that character at a point in time that he wasn't even alive yet, but find a way into that role. And I think it was also trying to utilize the kind of primitive technologies that were available to us to our benefit without it sounding too distracting or creaky. The next film that I want to make is actually going to be based on a play that I'm writing about an old movie theater that I used to work at in high school, and that had been around since the 1920s, and that closed during COVID. It used to be a vaudeville house, and then it became an art film house over the years. And the main relationships are the two teenagers that work there who are coming to their own, discovering their own sexual identity, and also what their place is in the world. With the owner and the manager was wouldn't watch the films that were being shown in the theater due to his religious beliefs, and about the conflict that he had with the owner, who was more interested in profit, and how they worked together for decades despite this conflict. And I felt like even though I was young when I worked there, I was a part of this historic theater that is now no longer with us. And it sort of shows about what we lost during modern times and during COVID.